All right.
So, welcome to Across the Pond, a conversation with David and Howard. Today's guest is Rose Latham, life and leadership coach based in Salisbury, Wiltshire, our first UK coach. Rose is so much more than just a coach. She's part of the leadership team at the AJC Coaching School and much more. Rose, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, you could say without further ado, let's jump straight in. You graciously coached me for most of last year, and I still very much consider you my coach. After university, you jumped into a life in South America for 3 years as a tour leader. You almost couldn't get further away from the UK if you tried. What prompted you to travel to the other side of the world, and what did you learn about yourself and other people? And I know you did it to improve your Spanish, but what else?
Oh,
What did
just um well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a real joy to be here with you both. Having spent time with both of you individually, I feel very blessed to have you both here on the same Zoom room. So thank you for that. And thank you for your introduction. It sounds like you've been reading my LinkedIn profile.
Of course,
Um,
research is everything.
Research is everything. Amazing. So there's a backstory here to how I ended up in South America, in that I was working in London for an advertising company at the time, in a job that was not aligned to my values at all. And I was enjoying it, being with all the young people. There was a lot of people my age. There was free flowing drinks and money and parties, but I knew it wasn't the right thing for me, even at the age of like 24, 25. And I actually won a holiday to Brazil. That's what took me to South America.
Right.
So I won a 2-week holiday, all expensive paid. And it was for me and a friend. I took a friend, and before we left, she was unhappy in her job as well. And we called up the airline and changed the flight to make it a year return. And we decided to stay out traveling. So that was what had me go to South America. So we did the 2-week tour, and then we traveled around. We traveled a bit more in Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile, Peru. And I didn't speak Spanish at that point. And my friend and I split at one point. She wanted to go and work in an animal sanctuary to volunteer. And I decided I wanted to learn Spanish. So I put myself in Spanish school. And I had a story at that point that I wasn't any good at learning languages. And that's probably a familiar story for a lot of native English speakers, particularly in the UK. We don't have a great
Yeah.
language learning
Yeah.
tradition. And I'd held that story since I'd been at school. And was looking around me and meeting people who could speak Spanish, who were travelers. And I met this elderly. She was probably like late 60s, nearly 70. She was, for me at age 25, she felt old. This lady,
Ancient.
ancient, right? And she was in Spanish school. And I remember thinking, she can do it. I can do this. It cannot be this hard. Like, I'm a smart person. I've got an Oxford degree. Like, come on, I'm going to do this. So I put myself into Spanish school, 6 weeks, 4 hours a day, and it completely shifted. Now looking back, it shifted my being. It shifted who I thought I was and what I saw as possible. Um, and I ended up speaking Spanish, learning it, and then speaking it in situ. And I then met somebody, a Peruvian guy who I had a fling with. Um, And and this was towards the end of the trip, and I decided, well, I decided on the trip I want to live abroad. And my thinking was, I'll live in Spain. And then I met him, and I thought, I'll live in Peru. So that's what I did. So I stayed in Peru, and I was actually ended up being out there for 5 years altogether. So there
Wow.
was
Wow.
2 years in Cusco, which is where there's my Peruvian, who became my fiance at the time, he lived. And he and I split up, and then I became a tour guide, and I traveled around South America leading tours, leading groups of British holiday makers across the continent. So that's the context of,
Wow.
so what I learned alongside an insane amount of Spanish was how to be incredibly adaptable. As every single country speaks Spanish in a slightly different way, their grammar, the slang, culturally they're different.
Mm.
Like there's a lot of similarities, but there were some marked differences. I learned leadership in situ. Every couple of months I'd have a new group coming out and I'd be taking them. I I mean, that was an incredible experience of really realizing that, unsurprisingly, people don't leave their emotional baggage at home. That was one of the biggest learnings. The first week everyone's lovely. By week two, the cracks are starting to show, and who people really are is everywhere, right? So I really learned that. And also, one of the major things I learned at the time, which I've realized now, and I've touched upon already, was how malleable who we're being is. And what I mean by that is when I'm speaking Spanish, particularly in certain cultures, certain countries, I spent a lot of time in Cuba. I noticed I adopted like I became much more embodied in how I expressed myself.
Mm.
I was different. And there was to do with the language, it was to do with the culture, it was to do with adopting what's around you. And I
Well, you were
was
growing as a person, right?
right. And it was really a fascinating experience.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really supported me in like across ever since in all the other professions and other types of phases of my life that I've had. And it was really experiencing that like in real time. So yeah, that's that period of time.
Excellent. And on returning to the UK, you took a couple of jobs as a project manager, working for another media trust, and Mend. Why did you do this? And what did you learn here? I mean, it was a bit abstract having done something similar before that you hated, and then going off and doing something that you loved, and then coming back into something that was sort of similar to what you'd done before.
So they were slightly different companies because they were charities.
Right.
So I went from sort of the advertising and marketing industry, then into travel, I guess you could look at, and then I basically came back to the UK. I was footloose and fancy free while I was abroad, and it got to a point where I needed to make a decision. I either settled somewhere over there or I settled and came back. And so I applied for a number of jobs in the UK, and I also applied for some jobs in South America. And I was like, well, wherever I get a job, that's where I'm going to go, and that will be the decision made for me. And the jobs that I got were in London. And if that hadn't worked out, I always had a plan that I was going to go and live in Buenos Aires in Argentina. That was my backup. So I had an escape plan
Okay.
A
already
lovely
lined up.
backup.
Exactly. Plan
Right.
B.
Plan B.
B for
So
Brazil.
yeah, right. So I ended up working in the charity sector, organizing volunteers, running volunteer groups, and those two things were quite aligned. That was what was those two jobs. And then it was a so what I learned I mean, it was more of that adaptability. I was adapting to being in London. I was in house shares, but I also learned that I wanted more, I think, and I didn't lose my passion for languages. And it was after that that I then applied to, around that time, I applied to be a teacher, a secondary school teacher, teaching Spanish. By then, I did a Spanish qualification because I didn't have that at that point. Did that and realized my journey through education and through learning to love languages. So it's like I wanted to take that into the place where I'd had a pretty negative experience of language learning.
Excellent.
Interesting. Your interest in learning basically reflected back into teaching. So you moved back to the UK. You started teaching at, if I pronounce this correctly, Highbury Field School.
That's right.
In London,
yeah.
Secondary school for girls, and ending up as the head of language. So we're still on conversation here, and then the head of sixth. Why the career in teaching?
I mean, it just made sense. I was looking for. I'm passionate about education. I'm a product of an education system that works in this country because it worked for me.
Okay.
It really worked for me, and it doesn't mean that it works for everyone. And I'm very aware of that. And I love learning, and I wanted to be in a place where where that was what was going on. And I think I've always um had a notion of imparting knowledge and sharing, and teaching just seemed like a natural next step. And honestly, at that point, if I'm going to be honest, there was a bursary for language teachers. I think there probably still is because there's a shortage in this country. So that was why teaching. And then my progression within that, I mean, was pretty unprecedented, to be honest, because you do your first year of teaching and you're what's called a newly qualified teacher. And I think that now is 2 years, but back then it was 1 year. And at the end of that year, my department was only 3 people and the other two left. So it was me left. And I found out later they approached a number of other people, external former teachers, like, will you come and lead this department? They all said no. So then they came to me like, will you lead the department? I was like, okay. So then became the head of languages the next year with two then newly qualified teachers. So we're all basically new together. Then I fell pregnant. Then I went off, had my child, came back, and at this point, it was like, this is a career that's good for families, like having a family. I came back, and at the end of it, after my maternity, being off for maternity leave, I was invited to apply for the head of sixth form role, which is a pastoral role for the final 2 years, for kids in their final 2 years of secondary.
Yeah.
So before they go off to university and college. And I that was the role I got, and continued at that, and that was pretty senior in the school.
Interesting. So I would say I'm a student of life, lifelong learner. I love the way you shared all that with us. And I know you started to develop your coaching skills while you're at the school, coaching the sixth and some of the other faculty. So it prompted the move to London and back, but you moved back to Salisbury and started a coaching practice there.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So it was around that time, after I had my second child, that I was really looking seriously at what the hell I was doing, because the teaching is an incredible profession, and it's a massive commitment. And I know I'm not alone when I say that my own children were coming last. In fact, not my own children. I was coming last in my life at around this point. I mean, had a fairly senior role. I was working 4 days a week. I was the only one on the leadership team that was working part-time. Everyone else around me was working full time. And so that was kind of unprecedented, but the work teaching is never ending. And I was working a lot of hours because it looked like that was what I had to do. And it was around that time that I met a coach. And I didn't know she was a coach, but she was a lady called Nadia Patel. And I loved her energy and I loved how vibrant she was. And she invited me to a conversation, to which I was like, hell yeah, let's just talk. I just want to hang out with you. You're amazing. And I felt seen, heard, and listened to like never before. And she asked me some questions that I just had never even considered. I ended up working with her under the guise of, I don't know what to do next, because if it's not teaching, I've got all done all these other things. I don't know what to do next. Like, what is
Hmm.
it that's going to fulfill me, light me up? Do I can bring all these skills?
Right,
Because I
right.
was looking at the next steps in teaching would be the progression would be deputy head, head teacher, that pathway. And I just didn't want to do it. I just did not want to do it. I really didn't. I
Okay.
was very clear. So, and it was through the course of being coached. At the end of it, I remember our final session. It was like the conclusion. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do what you do. This is what I absolutely love. This is what I'm doing. This is what I've been doing with those tour groups, with my students, with the teachers, with the parents. It's like it's all been this, but just not formalized. So then I did a coaching qualification. Then COVID hit. I stayed in teaching, brought all the coaching into teaching with the students, and saw how effective and helpful it was. And it was then that we moved away from London, came back to where my partner and I grew up. And that's when I made the decision to set up my coaching practice.
Okay.
Excellent. Now, I know that when I was looking for a coach myself, because every coach needs a coach, and choosing someone, for me, it was very much, I was looking to build a practice in Salisbury. This was something that you'd already done, and it was the fact that I could work with you on a face-to-face basis
Yeah.
instead of doing Zoom sessions with somebody elsewhere in the country or abroad. How do you typically work with your clients, and who are they typically these days?
These days, so it's always been the same kind of person, to be honest. It's senior leader. Now I've more defined of like a CEO or a managing director or a business owner. And what they're typically what their the headline is that they're looking to lead strategically, spend more time on strategy and less time on the day-to-day business, like less carrying it all
Okay.
themselves, doing it all themselves, being in operations. Um, and how I work with them is a combination. So I've got a number of clients who are based, say, globally or in London or distance from me. So half my clientele is that, and we work on Zoom, one-to-one sessions. And then I've got a group of clients who I work with who are more local, and we meet up face to face. So they either come to my home or I go to their place of work. And it's the same process, but it's in person.
Yeah.
And it's always been like that since I first started. I've had this combination, and it's always been a combination of men or women as well. I initially thought I'm going to be,
Interesting.
I initially thought I'm going to be I positioned myself as a female coach, leadership coach. My first client was a man. So like, okay, well, that's not true then, is it? So I'm just going to take that, just not do that. And ever since it's been, it varies, but more or less a 50-50 split.
Yeah, guys are okay.
Guys are
Both
okay.
happen.
And yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so are the women. Yeah.
Yeah. And so are women.
So, so you, okay, I made the statement, you're far more than just a life and leadership
Mm,
coach. You're also part of the leadership team at the AJC School of Coaching,
mm.
and which is okay, one of the most respected coaching schools, certainly in the UK, if not globally. How did this come about? And a role that most coaches would have cut their arm off. Singapore. Tell us about this and the journey that happened there.
So yeah, it's the, I have to roll back a little bit. So when I first, my incredible first coach, this is really like her legacy. Nadia Patel was that she was the first person I called doing coaching qualification, where to go, what to get, what should I do, how should I do this? And she said, make sure you're in a group. She's like, I really recommend if you're not going to have a one-on-one coach, have a group. And she said, I've been in this group called the Muslim Coaching Academy. And she herself was Muslim. And I said, well, will they take non-Muslims? And she's like, yeah, I think so. There's a couple of people. So I connected with them and I joined their group. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but the two leaders called Sioash Samat and Asya Ottman, Sioash had been through Steve Chandler's ACS school. He'd been coached direct and he'd been coached one-on-one by Steve Chandler. He also ended up going and having a be with session with Steve Hardison. Now, this didn't mean anything to me at the time, but I joined that group in September. In October or November of that year, the manuscript for the Ultimate Coach book came out, and the first Ultimate Experience event occurred in Arizona. Now, at the time, Steve Hardison, and still is, was an incredibly well-respected coach in the industry, and Steve Chandler is the godfather of coaching. So from that moment on, I was pretty much directed to read The Ultimate Coach. I was invited to go into the community on Facebook. And very early on, I learned about being and understanding what it was and being around an incredible caliber of coaches. This is important because this is where I met Ankush. At the end of that year, Matt Smith, who is a fellow British coach, he received a vision to put on the Ultimate Experience London. And I put my hand up thinking, well, I'm a relatively new coach. I'm pretty good at organizing stuff. And at that point, I would put my hand up to actually present. I'd love to be part of organizing that. And as the team changed, it ended up being there were about 5 or 6 of us, of which Ankush Jain was one, and a number of other well-known coaches, Raghav Parkash, Fiona Ross, Matt Evans, Matt Smith, Marina Lazarus. We were on the leadership team and we delivered this epic 500 strong event, the Ultimate Experience in London. And that was my first exposure to being in this environment of like incredible people and coaches. And following that, I was still in the Muslim Coaching Academy, which was an incredible experience to be part of. And
Sounds like it.
yeah, mastering, enrollment, all aligned with the Steve Chandler approach of being of service. So when Ankush set up his school, I did speak to him about joining, but I was committed to the first school. And I was like, I'm not ready yet. I'm still in this one. I'm going to finish here. But my coach, Nadia, she did the first year with Ankush. And I was like, I go where she goes. So I'm following her. And so that was how I ended up taking part in the school. So the first year, the second year of the school, AJC2, I was a participant. I signed up. I loved the experience. I got to experience really being in a room and being present with an incredible caliber of people, but more than anything, being as the vision for a coaching school that is changing the consciousness of the planet. It was the first time that was shared, and I got a real sense of like, oh, this being, it's more than just an intellectual idea. It's someone's soul speaking to another group of people, their soul. And that's very hard to articulate, but really, when you feel it, you know when you're speaking heart to heart. And so it was an incredibly moving experience. And my business grew as a result of being in that school, of being around the coaches. I met my now coach Fiona Ross there, who I've been working with ever since. And it was a transformational experience. I absolutely loved it. Then some challenges occurred in my personal life with my
They always
husband.
do.
Yeah, he experienced some
There's
illness,
bumps in the road.
right, bumps in the road. And so when it came to the enrolling for the next year, I just couldn't see a way that I could make it happen. And it was I had a conversation with my husband, was like, this isn't the time. But I don't know exactly, I can't remember exactly what was going on, but I know I started to spiral a little bit. And I had a conversation with Ankush over the summer, and he'd been around me and he'd experienced me. And one of the other participants called him up and said, we need Rose in this school. She needs to be part of this. It was Angie Scott. And he only told me this afterwards. And he then called me and he said, I've created something for you. You don't have to do this, but this is what I see. This is who you are. This is what's possible. Will you come on board and be client director of the school? Because I know you're going to bring so much value to this. And the school is growing, and I need someone with your expertise. And I didn't even have to think about it. I was a yes straight away. And that's how I came to be in
Excellent.
in
Wow.
in the role. And it was
Yeah.
about
Wow.
a week before the school was due to meet and be delivered.
So this would have been what, year three?
Yeah, that was year 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Well, I'm thinking about something here, Rose.
Mm,
Well, don't get too excited. I think we've all had great conversations with Ankush. I'm probably the junior on this call. But what I'm thinking here is your journey with the AJC has been unique, and you just
mm.
started to subscribe on, your origin story, so to speak, and um, a journey that about including yourself, but most of the time you have been hiding in the background. So keeping out of the limelight. What's prompted you now to seek being more forward, being in the limelight now?
Yeah, good question.
If that's a question.
No, I mean,
Oh, I'd love to hear.
I hear like, why do I want to be more visible now,
Yeah, why here,
if
why
you like?
now?
And I think what I've realized is, and I've mentioned this to Howard in private conversation, is that I'm brilliant at supporting others. Like I'm exceptional at delivering other people's vision.
Right.
Like operationally, you can give me the thing and I'll do it and I'll deliver it. And that's great. But there's this and that's I've not been honoring. And I think there's a vulnerability for me about being seen when I'm not performing. And that is my edge that I've realized. And it's really interesting because since I declared this probably a few weeks ago, and other people have said it, but since I really realized and was like, oh my gosh, I'm always putting my hand up to be vice president or second in command or the voice piece for someone else's vision, and there's great value in that. It's not to detract from it. But what is it that I really want to create in my way? I've noticed that in the past I freeze around that, and I'll have I don't know, or I better just go and research something, or I'll distract my way out of it. And so this edge, I'm like, that's where my growth is. And it's not surprising that that is an edge for many of my clients, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
this being seen piece. But being seen in their fullness and their greatness and their everything that's possibleness, and it being a bit messy, right? Because that's the fear that I think my nervous system has or my body has is like, well, it can't be messy. And it's like, well, actually, it's probably going to be a bit messy. And that's why I need to lean into it, to practice being with the unpolished, imperfect messiness and it all being fine. And so I've had a couple of experiences recently that have like really highlighted this, and just one that I'll share here. I went on a photo shoot last week, which I knowingly signed up to create some brand photographs for myself because all my photos are me doing a selfie, right? So I was like, it would be really nice to have a full body picture. And it was incredibly confronting, right? So like all those stories came up. I compared myself to the other people who were on the photo shoot. They looked amazing. I didn't. Who was I being? What did I look like? I felt so awkward because as soon as the camera came, some sort of performance like occurred in me, a stiffening, a performance of like, oh, it needs to be like this, some sort of seriousness. And it's not me. It's not who I am. And by the end of the day, I was, you know, kudos to models, I've got to say, because I was done. I was really exhausted. And but also just like performing, it was this constant dance between this is how I'm supposed to be and when am I being myself. And there are some like there's some great photos. Some of them look really good, some of them might
Interesting.
just look incredibly awkward, right? But it was a great experience. But by the end, we looked at the final photos and I just burst into tears and walked off because I was like, I can't. This has been so much, it's been so confronting to be with myself through this. I hadn't wasn't really acknowledging the turbulence that was going on internally. And what an incredible gift, right? To have done
Yeah.
that and like seen myself in such sharp relief and everything's fine. And I've got some lovely photos. And I'll be much better prepared for next time. It's like only by
Right.
inching out into these things am I going to get any more comfortable. So hence I reached out
It
to Howard and was
almost
like,
sounds like baptism by fire.
can I be on your
Yeah, you
podcast? Because I was
just
like,
got to throw
this is
yourself into
it.
it.
This is
Yeah.
it. And I've been invited to about three other things in the last week, which require me to be more visible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, right, this is
Mhm.
it. This is me to lean in. This is getting the reps in. Who am I going to be? How am I going to be with myself as this all unfolds?
Excellent.
So,
I like that. Yeah, I like the term you use that that's your edge.
yeah.
Um, and I really relate to the term messy.
Mm,
I'm at an incubator for startups. My
okay.
my almost my whole career has been with startups, and startups are very messy. Every day is a new day, and
Right.
you're just trying to, build the company, build the brand, build everything.
Mm,
Um, so one thing I do relate to is CEOs are all over the map, and I think you typically work with CEOs,
mm,
people stepping into top leadership roles
yeah.
within, was it SMEs, small to medium enterprise
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
Um, Tell us about that and what your aspirations of working with large enterprises, organizations would be, like big CEOs.
So I mean, I work with currently there's some smaller ones, and I've also worked with senior leaders in larger organizations as well. So there is a combination. Um, it's private one-on-one work at this point. What my aspiration is to do more group work in person with teams, and that's the position I'm moving into more over the coming year. So running workshops, exploring the concepts that I'm talking about, or coaching the leaders around, and taking that to their teams because
Mhm.
these are cultural shifts, to be honest, that I'm
Right.
talking about with that I coach around with the leaders. And I think it's equally as applicable in a larger organization as it is a smaller one. It just happens to be at this point that SMEs are the people that I'm drawn to or are coming into my world or they've been referred to me. So, but I'm open to larger organizations in the future. I think it will be more potentially more powerful or more useful for them when I've got more it sounds like when I've got more experience running workshops, but I want to have I'm creating a program of
Hmm.
workshops that I can take to an organization and then curate it with them. Um, but I see the ripples of the size of the organization isn't as important as to the ripples of the work going out, if
Hmm.
that makes
Okay.
sense. I'm not
Yeah.
tied
Yeah,
to
it
it
does.
needs to
It
be a
does.
small or a large. Yeah. I mean, you tell me what's your experience with because the incubators is one arena. Where else do you take your workshops?
Well, that's interesting because I got another question for you, and it's on the same line. So what I'm finding right now, and maybe I'm in a growth period, who knows? I call it expansion. Howard and I have been talking a little bit. At least I've shared, I've had many conversations with other coaches
Mm,
because I'm just curious by nature. I wanted to, find out more about, you know, what they're coaching, how they're coaching, figure out their style, where they find their
mm,
clients, and just learn. And so I don't know if I answered your question there, but that's just kind of what I've been working on and, where things are going. And I know obviously you've worked with a lot of exceptional coaches at the AJC. I know you've also, well, I don't personally know, but I think you've helped many
mm.
um, other aspiring coaches, which is kind of the same thought process here. What plans or aspirations do you have in working in this niche with
In, whi-
coaches?
in which in working with coaches
Yeah, coaching
specifically.
coaches. Yeah. What does that look like moving forward?
So since I've started, my roster is I have space for 12 one-on-one clients. And since started coaching, I've normally had one or no. So normally like one coach on my books. It's not traditionally the group that I
Okay.
attract or that I work with. So my aspiration, and that's not to say that I don't. I think that's great. There's a real there's a beautiful thing in working with a fellow coach. Like
Hmm.
it is distinct, it is different because you're looking, there's a different kind of hunger sometimes that is there. And it's not my main source of my business. I have
Okay.
to be really honest. So I don't have a vision of moving into I'm going to be the coach that coaches coaches. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm one of the things I love about being in the AJC is that I get to experience that and have a business that runs off working with non-coaches mostly. Um, and that I find that I really love that. I really find it incredibly fulfilling, but also translating what we talk about in the AJC into the non-coach world. And it doesn't take much to translate it, to be quite honest. It's like
Right.
that's the beautiful thing about, I think, the legacy that Steve Chandler and Steve Hardison have gifted us to this world is like it's very practical, it's very real. It's actually simplifying things where most people are making things incredibly complicated.
Hmm.
So
I like that.
one of the subjects we've spoken about numerous
Mm,
times, both from getting the most out of something, helping a client, the power of listening, switching on your 10-10 listening skills. This is where the real skill in coaching comes from. Tell us about that, because I know you're quite passionate about that. And, you know, we had a recent conversation about, I heard this, which I wouldn't have heard previously, but I
mm,
suddenly became more attuned to listening to what somebody had said, which was probably a very short sentence, but
mm.
it's something that resonated. And it's not something that you necessarily your power of listening isn't always there. It's something that develops.
Mm.
Mm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I know that
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
a skill set.
subject that you're quite hot on, quite keen on, know a lot about.
I just want to check what we're talking about here.
The
Could you give me
power of listening.
the power of listening? Okay, okay. Um, is it okay if you share what it was the experience that you had? Because I think that might be useful.
Okay, so the thing that I had somebody who asked me to coach them,
Mm,
and one of the things, she was telling me why. She said that she'd been headhunted for a role that she didn't feel qualified to do.
mm,
There's no two ways about it. She is qualified, but she believed that she wasn't qualified to do.
mm.
Um,
Mm.
and it was also because it was more than double her salary. So
Right.
she felt and she skipped over it very quickly and then moved on and talked about something else. But that became the subject actually beginning of this week that I raised with her and
Mm.
sort of said, look, you said something, a few weeks ago when we met that you mentioned that it was too big for you. Why was that?
Okay.
And that sort of took the wind out of her sails a little bit because she'd said it almost as a passing comment, but
Right.
it was the thing that I picked up on, and that has now become the linch pin in moving
Yeah.
forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I th and then that's a brilliant example, right, of listening, listening for not necessarily the content. So and listening for like the energy that's behind.
And
And
and, and the emotion.
exactly, exactly. It's almost like the feeling that's behind what's been shared. And I think you've picked up on beautifully there, it's in the throwaway lines. It's the throwaway lines that people say, oh, I'm such an idiot. And da 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 da. Oh, I'm so silly, I shouldn't think that. Da 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 da. And it's those lines that are the big reveals. And I think when I speak to so I speak with, share this idea of what is listening with all my clients. Because what most people do and what we're conditioned to do is listen to the content,
Hmm.
purely the content. And while we're listening to the content, our mind is innocently coming up with its response. It's thinking, do I like this? Do I dislike it? Do I agree? Do I disagree? Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Will I look good or will I look bad? You know, what's my opinion? That's what minds do. And what most people do while they're listening to somebody else is they're really listening to the content of their thinking
Yeah.
about what the other person's saying.
And thinking about their response and what they're going to say next.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Planning and anticipating, when is it, almost like when's it my turn? And when you start watching people, you start seeing like they're almost like chomping at the bit to say their thing. Like they can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, the idea of planning what you're going to say and not finishing the listening part, if that makes sense, really detracts from the experience or the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Anyway,
Yeah.
those are my thoughts.
Yeah. And it slows things down, right? When when we start noticing, I know for me, as I've started to notice what's going on in me. So as I pay a bit of attention to what's happening in me as I'm listening to someone else, it doesn't mean I don't do that, but I've
Right.
got a much more awareness of it.
Yeah.
And there's certain techniques like the power of the pause, like just pausing for me just slows things down a little bit internally, but also
Bingo. Yeah.
often the other person hasn't finished speaking. They
Right.
gifting them that pause. Then once they've shared what's in their thinking, then they start to settle. I've noticed other people start to settle a little bit more. They settle into their bodies a little bit more. They start listening to themselves a little bit differently. We could say they're becoming a little bit more regulated. They're grounded, a bit more grounded in the moment. And then you start to notice, and I think Howard and I've talked about this, that the intonation that people have, where's their tone? And that's giving us clues as well about where people are coming from with what they're sharing. Are they coming from their head? Are they coming from their heart? Are they coming from what their mum or dad said to them however many years
Hmm.
ago? All these different, so there's so much information available. And I think of myself like a detective, and I'm listening out for clues.
I like that.
And then slowing it down to ask somebody. So the throwaway comment is then there's an opportunity for me to say, hold on a second, can I just ask you something? And then I can slow the whole thing down, because in the throwaway comment is the reveal about what's really going on in that person's operating system of what they believe about themselves, or how they view the world, or how they're experiencing someone else or a circumstance. So for me, listening is an incredible gift that we have, and there's so many layers to it,
Yeah.
There you go.
and I'm constantly discovering more recently. It's like about how I listen to myself, right? I've noticed that the more I'm yeah, great, I can listen to others, but my listening for myself and my experience, sometimes I tune out of that. I try and I innocently go into fix. I need to fix this. There's something wrong with feeling like however I'm feeling in that day. Say I'm feeling a bit insecure. There's something wrong with this. So I don't want to feel that. I don't want to listen to that. And it's not that I need to listen to the thinking, but I can listen to the experience, the feeling in my body, and be with that. Whoa, that's opened up some things for me
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
didn't realize I'd been avoiding, you
Yeah, I
know?
wanted to comment on that. Yeah,
Please
listening is
do.
not always auditory.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's a visual thing. If you're
yeah,
one-on-one or talking to a group, it's kind of reading the expressions. We're all human. We all,
exactly.
you know, I may go deadpan and say, "Rose, you're boring
Yeah,
me," and you can
right.
read that. I don't even have to say that out loud. So,
Yeah,
yeah, all the senses come into play when you're a good listener.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And and they say that you're not a coach unless you're coaching. That coaching is almost a life of two halves, because you have the coaching, and then you have the creating of the clients. And obviously this is a subject close to my heart and has been for quite a long time. Um, the latter is something that many other coaches struggle with. And I know that you've helped many coaches with this.
Mm.
Do you see this as a potential niche? And is this, if not this, then what or where do you see whether or not you want to help coaches grow? I mean, you're involved in the AJC very much
Mm.
in the back end, but how much time are you coaching people in the school?
Okay, so there's a few questions in there.
Yeah.
Which one would you like me to address first?
You choose which one.
I'm glad you're listening.
So the so it's interesting. So I'm not in the back end in AJC,
Right.
right? So at the live weekends, I'm there, I'm part of the delivery and facilitating and very present in the room, and literally the room and the rooms where people are, and constantly calibrating who's where, what's going on, sense checking and
Right.
monitoring. And it can be literally like who's sort of falling asleep, right, from jet lag, right through to who's unwell, right through to calibrating like what's someone experienced, like what are they taking away, who would benefit from a bit of support. Holding the space, which sounds a bit, that's a bit intangible, but it takes something for Ankush does a lot of delivery and he's monitoring, but not in the same way. He kind of monitors and then he steps out and he goes and he grounds, if you like. I don't think that's what he said he was doing, but that's how I experience him. That's what I notice him. He's going to regulate, he's going to settle, he's clearing his thinking and coming to his being and recentering. And so the three of us, myself, Felipe, and Ankush, we have this almost this dance that occurs, and I bring something to that, the three of us, that team, that femininity, if you like, that maybe that nurturing that wasn't as live before. And that's quite interesting. So that's that piece. But that's not to defend that. It's just to say that, yeah, right now in within the school, when it's in terms of delivery, masterclasses and that kind of thing, I'm not as visible. How much coaching goes on is I ensure that I have one-to-ones with pretty much everyone in the school, and there is coaching that occurs through that. And I've supported some more than others. You know, it really depends on who's where. And ultimately, it's not about having a free coach, but it is about having someone on hand who gets where they're at, who
Yeah.
has an understanding of their business. Because Ankush can't support physically all 45
Yeah. Yeah.
members of all the participants
All of the time.
all
Yeah.
of the time. It's just
Yeah.
impossible. And similarly in
Right.
enrollment. So this brings me to one of the questions in here, the the dance, if you like, of you mentioned it was two separate things. Like there's coaching, delivery of, and then there's
Well,
enrollment.
it's one thing, but it's got two halves to it because,
Okay.
you know, you can be an exceptional coach, but if you're not coaching anyone because you haven't created any clients,
Yeah.
because you can't be a coach unless you're creating clients. So it's almost in essence it's one and the same thing.
Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah.
So I think there is a tendency within coaching to say, um, I'm a great coach, but I struggle with enrollment. Well, it's like, well, enrollment is coaching.
Yeah.
It's an expanded version. It's not a place that we're very
Right.
used
Right.
to
Yeah.
because it doesn't, there's not many other opportunities
Yeah.
to coach as you're uh creating a relationship in order for you to have an exchange of monetary value for time at some point and be with
Right.
somebody.
And
And
and and
arguably that's what sales is,
yeah,
right?
and here's the rub. This is one of the things that I've found is that just by serving,
Right.
people will then ask you to coach them if they
Exactly
know
that.
you're a coach. But when you go out and try and create
Mm,
a
Exactly.
client, it
It's
it,
not
it
transactional.
no, no. So it's and that takes a while, I think, to settle with people.
yeah, and there's a lot of noise, right? And so
Yeah,
there's a lot of noise because there's a online, it looks like we can help sit with stories around, well, they just put the offer up and all these people sign up. What we don't see is all the work that goes behind that for the people
yeah,
that are genuinely being successful in that,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because there's multiple touch points, they've built a community, there's relationships. They didn't just start and put the thing out and all the people sign up.
yeah.
I've
Right.
seen it in AJC, right? So this year, currently, we have not officially launched and we have 26 people have signed up.
Yeah.
That is unprecedented,
Right.
right?
Interesting.
Unprecedented. And that's not because of some clever marketing. That's because of who Ankush is being in the world, who the coaches are being in the world, how we're talking about it, how we're creating it, how we're taking a stand for it. all of us who are involved. And that takes some time, and it's building a relationship, if you like. And in fact, it is about building relationships and being of service. And it's an art, it's not a science,
Yeah.
right? There's certain things that are really useful to do. And there's the art of navigating and building relationship in this way that has people want to and encouraged to be part of it. And that's the long game, right? Relationships are the long game. And that's what service is. And that's, that's one of the pillars of the school. It's one of the pillars of how I operate.
Yeah.
As I say, I talked to one of my former clients today. That wasn't to get anything. It was genuinely, we had an incredible conversation.
Yeah.
She was served by it, she said at the end, right? And we will be speaking again. But I was really clear with her, like, we've been trying to have this conversation for a while, simply because I want to hear where she's at.
Yeah.
Because we've got a
Right.
relationship that was very profound from before. And I'm like, well, where are you now? What's happening now?
Right. It's like how we started out this whole conversation earlier. It's
Yeah,
like, where are you in your journey right now?
right,
How can I be the best person for you?
right. And the temptation is that it looks transactional, but we're not selling jumpers here,
No.
right?
Well, I need one, but anyway, that's off topic.
Okay, I'm conscious of time here, and I wanted to go a little deeper on Rose.
Okay.
So I know, and I think many other people know, you got married last summer,
Yeah.
something that's been pivotal in your growth.
Mm.
You've got two children, a boy and a girl, 9 and 11. Is that
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit younger,
And
actually, eight and 11, but that's
eight,
fine. That's
eight and
fine.
11. So what does family life look like for you as a coach?
Mm.
Many others who come to coaching later in life don't have that,
Mm.
but
Mm.
you're a mum, you're a wife, you're a
Mm.
coach,
Mm.
you're a leadership within the AJC. I mean,
Mm.
how does that look? How do you manage? How do you juggle all of those things?
Great question. And in the short answer is, I'm learning, honestly. That's really maybe a bit evasive. Um, Everyone gets to experience who I am being, right? So what that means is how I show up in a call like this is how I aim to show up when I'm being with my kids. It's being present. Like that's how I do it. And the work for me, the unlearning, has been letting go of what I think it's supposed to look like. And so in real life, like in my family, what that means is I've experimented with working evenings and realizing, okay, that doesn't work for me and my family. So I no longer do that. I still have an agreement with my husband that if I want to attend a seminar or something, as long as I let him know, he's like, that's fine. But not every night, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, so we talk about it. He's supportive of my involvement in AJC and of trainings. And it's like, and I'm supportive of him going and doing his thing. So it's like we have open conversation and dialogue. But where the work has been is us having those difficult conversations, what's felt like difficult conversations for me or difficult conversations for him, kind of, and we might call it enrolling him in what I'm doing. But for example, I went to the ultimate experience in India, right, in Mumbai, for 5 days. Well, it's 3 days, one day travel and one day back, and then two or 3 days there.
Yeah.
That was an ask for him.
Yeah.
And it was
Mhm.
an ask that I had to present to him in a way. It's like, this is an investment in me and who I'm being and what I'm up to, and this is why. And so we're constantly looking at that and having those kind of conversations. Um, And and it's not always easy, right? So I'll be really honest. My kids have school holidays, so I spend more time with him. So my work is more flexible than his, and we've created it like that.
Right.
And the day, so we've just had 2 weeks holiday. I spent more time with the children, being with them. I'm much more mindful now of I'm never going to have this particular time with them again. Like
Yeah.
my eldest is about to go to secondary or high school. So I'm very like, okay, what are we creating? How are we being with each other? I can spend my time trying to do work and then being annoyed at them, or I can just fully be where I'm going to be and just be really clear about that. And I found that's much more helpful. But the day they went back to school, emotionally, I was like spiraled, not because I wasn't with them, but because it takes a different kind of energy. I'd spent
Yeah.
2 weeks being with young people who have all
You,
young
you,
people feelings and
you have to take
Right.
one hat off and put
All that
another hat on, and it
right,
takes
all that
adjustment.
energy.
Yeah.
yeah. And so the first day, it was like, oh my gosh, what's having a coaching session with my coach. I'm like, there's something, almost I was coming from, there's something wrong. Like, why am I feeling so unconfident? Self-doubt. And by the next day, it had gone. It was settled. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, there was nothing beyond, there was some turbulence and adjustment. So I'm still learning this,
Yeah.
right? It shows up. And I kind of love that. I used to really annoy me. And now I'm like, okay, this is what this is like. There's ebbs and flows because there are ebbs and flows in my life. There are ebbs and flows in my
Mm,
children's lives
right.
right now. This is the phase that we are at. Um, and it's the same with my partner, and it's the same with these different aspects. They, I just have to be I'm very present. I'm mindful of being present, and I'm mindful of where I'm placing my energy and attention.
Yeah.
Increasingly every day, I'm much more mindful
Right.
of that.
And if you don't mind me saying,
Mm.
you do that when you're coaching someone, you give them, that 100%, um, and nothing else interferes with that.
Mm.
And that's an art in itself,
Mm.
without a doubt.
Thank you.
Not being distracted, that you hold somebody's attention, um, and you give 100% of yourself at the time to that person.
Mm. Thank you for reflecting that back.
Yeah.
Well,
I received that.
well,
So here's another one. In an ideal world, or if like
Mm.
this was going to be the question, in an ideal world, who would you love to work with and why? And
Ooh,
I'll add to that,
yeah.
who would you love to be coached by?
Would I love to be coached by?
ooh, good question.
Mm.
Have I stumped you?
Potentially. What's really fascinating, right? In the loving to be coached by is that I have access to exceptional coaches, and I have been coached by exceptional coaches. I've had been in rooms and had conversations, say with Steve Hardison, and even though we weren't in a paid agreement, you're getting coached by that individual.
Yeah,
Like he was coaching me
yeah.
just in who he was being,
Just his
what he
presence.
shared.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so, but someone who okay, this isn't like a wish list, but I would be fascinated to be coached by Rich Litvin because I've
right.
never had any contact with him. And he's
Yeah,
someone who I'm on his newsletter and I'm like really intrigued by. Um, not intrigued by, uh, inspired by, that's a better word. But that doesn't mean I'm sitting here going, well, if only, like, if I really wanted to, I could pay and go in Rich's group.
yeah,
So I don't actually sit around thinking, like, oh, my dream person to be coached by is this. Because here's the thing that I've really noticed. And again, this could sound a little bit, doesn't matter how it sounds. The truth is,
Just say it.
my
Yeah.
best coach is my husband. Like, seriously? Like, he sees through all my bullshit. He sees through all of it. He calls it out. He's like, what you need to do is this. When I do it, it's like, I've been telling you this for ages. He is always in my corner. He's always got my back. He always listens when I'm ranting about whatever it is I'm ranting about. And he loves me with all of that, with all
Yeah.
the mess. He sees
Yeah.
all the mess. He sees the highs, the lows, the breakdowns. And you know, the other person who I've learned so much from is my daughter.
Yeah.
My eldest daughter has, when people, I used to hear things, or on Instagram when it first, when it first came out, but literally that when I first went onto Instagram and I'd follow some parenting things. Oh, my child is my best teacher. I was like, well, I really don't get that. Like, what a load of whatever.
No, it isn't.
But actually, it's 100% true. With my daughter, I've had to learn how to apologize, how to take ownership, how to lead without imposing, like how to work as a team, how to meet her where she is, like so much.
Yeah.
So that's they honestly with and increasingly without a shadow of a doubt, like they are like the best coaches that I
Yeah.
have access
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Because my daughter even said to me last night, I'm just a mirror of you. You know that, right?
I
Like,
love that.
no,
Wow.
but this is true.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
I just do what you do. I just do what you've been. So if you know, it was in the context of we'd
Yeah.
asked her to do something and she refused to do it because she's like, you don't do it. Oh, she's right.
well,
Yeah.
now I feel so junior because I used to say my daughters raised me well.
Right,
It's like I had no idea what I was doing. They
right.
figured it out and they taught me, and it's like it was amazing. It still
Exactly
is.
that.
They're still doing it.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly that. And it's
Oh,
like slowing down to that, I think is
yeah.
so key because it looks like, oh, it's somebody out there, and it's like they're right here.
Yeah.
They're right
Yeah.
here in the four walls of my home.
So I've got one last question for you. What's one thing, or what is the one thing that you'd like to share that has had an impact on your own coaching practice that you would think may help other people?
Slow down.
mm,
That is slowing down to who's in front of me, slowing down to what goes on in me when I'm speaking to somebody else, slowing down to what's being shared, slowing down to like ask the question that looks like a stupid question, but actually is the most revealing question. Slowing down to lean into something that feels really uncomfortable. Like, could I make you an offer? Would you be open if I made you an offer right now? Like, that's so uncomfortable, was so uncomfortable for me. And slowing down to that and noticing and then going there. And so I want it to be practical. It's not an abstract thing. Slowing down to when someone drops into my mind, like in this, I'm learning this, I'm still practicing this. So the reason I got in contact with that client I mentioned to you, it's because I thought about her yesterday. And so I messaged her and normally that would just be one of 70,000 thoughts that drops in. But I registered it and was like, okay, I'm gonna message her now. I'm gonna hear that, message her, and then I move on. Hear
Yeah.
something, message, move on. And it's like slowing down to what is kind of coming through or being emerging in my thinking and what happens in a lot of coaches, myself included, particularly when you first start, is like, I should be there by now, it should look like this,
Yeah.
I'm not going fast enough. And we miss, I know I did, I missed like certain people that were right in front of me because I was meant to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so slowing down in all its guises, as frustrating as that has been for my mind to hear, and my
Yeah.
thinking's like not slowing down. No, I can't slow down my thinking. It's like, no, it's everything else except that. It's like, but as everything else slows down, the thinking settles. I found
Exactly.
for myself.
And you said you asked me a question earlier in the week. You said, what did I get out of the call with
Mm,
Ankush?
yeah,
And that was one of the things, because he said, Howard, you're just too busy. He said, you just need to slow down. And yet I've been trying to pick up speed,
right,
thinking I can get there quicker. And
right.
he said, look, no, he said, you just need to slow down.
It's counterintuitive, right?
It is, yeah.
No, no, it's not. And I'm looking at it from a different angle, if it makes
Mm,
sense.
mm,
Um, this whole conversation, or at least how you described it, Rose, is it's really the definition of emotional intelligence. Just be able to slow down, be present, listen.
mm,
I mean, this almost sums up our entire podcast conversation right
mm,
here. We've talked about all this already. It's
mm,
just coming together in this part.
Yeah.
mm.
Excellent.
And
Rose,
you're welcome. Yeah, go on. Sorry, I was just going to keep
Rose,
talking.
thank you very much for
Oh, I know. I can
Rose,
too, but
thank you very much for
I'm gonna
coming
be
along
polite.
today.
Thank you.
Have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you both. Yeah, you
Go and
too.
spend
It's
some
been a
time
joy.
with your kids and Tom.
Hmm.
And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thank you both very much for having
Same
me.
here.
It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Rose. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.